So can you please tell me a little bit about yourself, your name, where you live and you work?
Sure. My name is Emiliya Zhivotovkaya, and I live and work in New York City, New York. And I work with people all over the world, mainly by phone. So although I'm based in New York City, not really limited by location.
Right.
So I work wherever I am.
Right. And what do you do?
I'm a positive psychology-based coach, speaker, and yoga teacher.
Right. And what's your background for doing that?
My background is I have a master's in positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, and I also am getting a certification right now in coaching, but I also have training before that in yoga for children and teenagers, in a number of holistic practices, and then other certifications like in motivational interviewing. What else? It goes on and on. So lots of other things that I think help me be effective in what I do. But primarily, a lot of it is based on positive psychology.
Right. And so how long would you say you've been doing positive psychology and coaching?
For 5 years.
5 years. And can you tell me a little bit about the elements in your job? Like what tasks do you do? Like what do you coach individuals, groups?
Mm-hmm. So most of it is individual coaching. That's the bulk of the hours throughout the week. I also teach courses, either courses I've put together in person, or I'll run groups where once a month I'll cover a different topic in positive psychology. I do courses over the internet, such as webinars and teleseminar courses. I also teach individual yoga classes and work with students individually as well. So my weeks are a combination of that. I do speaking for organizations, I do consulting projects. So it's all under the umbrella of flourishing. Just different ways to help individuals and organizations flourish, and the modality varies from week to week, but there's a consistency in either working in a group or working individually, and I really love the combination of all of the different offerings that I do.
And the people who come to you, what do they ask for?
It varies. For individual coaching, it's just they're needing a change wherever they're at in their life. So sometimes people will come with a specific goal that they're wanting to meet, such as I'm unemployed and I'd like to figure out what I left my job and trying to figure out what the next thing will be, or everything in my life is going great except for I'm not able to find a fulfilling relationship, or on the outside everything looks like it's great but I'm really not secure about myself and I have all this mind chatter about not being good enough inside. So it really varies what it is that people go for. My niche, I would say, is looking more from a cognitive and positive psychology perspective in the tools that I offer people and the ways in which I work with them. But I'm not limited to, I don't really limit myself to any one problem that people are wanting to work on in their lives.
So can you explain the last part again? So you don't limit to one problem or one solution?
So when I would say problem, for example, there's some people who just do career coaching, and that career coaching is like what they define themselves by, or people who just do health and weight loss coaching. And you know, I work with, I think I consider life coaching to be any element of their life, particularly when they're the expert of their life. It's just using the same tools, just in different ways. So the actual circumstance that people come to coaching with really varies, but it's all under the umbrella of they're wanting to see a change in their life.
Right. So is it mostly people who pay themselves, or companies who ask you to do coaching, or?
All of my coaching is individuals who pay by themselves.
Right.
And then I do a variety of either just one-on-one individual coaching for people who could afford that route, and people for whom that's not available, I offer them a more group dynamic, whether it be group teleseminar over the phone or group in person.
Right. So if I wanted individual coaching, what would a coaching engagement look like? What would happen when I call you up or email you?
Great. We would start off with just a consultation call. Before that, I would ask you to answer a couple of questions for me, enable me to know more about where you are in your life, what you're wanting, how committed you are about making a change. Then we would get on the phone together and just do a quick session where it's just an opportunity for me to ask you some questions deeper, and an opportunity for you to ask me about coaching and what it is. It's a new field, so oftentimes people are like, what is this coaching thing? You know, kind of want to try it, but I'm not sure what it is, so we get to explore that together. And then in terms of the actual engagement, I don't have clients sign up with contracts. offer different packages for lumps of time, but it's on a contractual basis. It's on a, how spirit moves us to continue to work together. So I offer for people to either start individually, or when I say individually, just one session per week as they're moving along, and they can just, stop at any time. Or we do month by month. They get a group of sessions for a month. In the beginning, I tell a lot of my clients that we start off with just weekly sessions. Over time, they usually get things going in their life and things are moving really well, and then we space it out to once every 2 weeks, then once a month, and then booster sessions as they need.
Right.
But there isn't any one, this is a minimum of how long I work with people for, and there also isn't there isn't a sense of, there's an average length of time that based on my past experience, I could say I'll maybe get a feel for how long we might be in a coaching engagement together. But at the same time, there's no consistency, because it depends on how much of their own work they've done on themselves and their goal that they bring to the table.
Right. So what would happen after that call?
After the individual call, I use a customer relations management program so I set them up as an individual user within my website, where they get access to content that's available just for clients, a whole bunch of forms and questionnaires. So after that initial agreement, the initial coaching consultation, if they wanted to set up their first real session, we would get them registered into my system that way. And depending on where the person was at and what I felt would be a great next step based on the kind of goals that they brought or what it is that they're wanting, I would basically pick and choose from some of the different content I have in there and send them kind of like a homework to do before the next time we speak. And oftentimes it'll just be another thing of like answering a set of questions. So I'll send them a list of questions or a survey or something to help get them a little bit clearer on what it is that they would like to do. I'll send them some information. I'll send them a questionnaire. I'll set them, maybe it's just identification of their goals, which is a different worksheet I've put together where we identify what the goal is, how long it'll take them, what some of the different steps are. So it really varies depending on what our first conversation brought before we have our first session. Sometimes I'll give them an assignment just saying, for the next week, I want you to tune into your mind chatter, your free flow thoughts that go on in your mind, and keep note of those sort of things. So I will give some sort of invitation for them to try something out. And then being that they're in the system, when they fill things out, they automatically get sent to me, and we can interact virtually that way, which enables me to sort of see where they're at beforehand. They'll get an email reminder 24 hours before our session with an invitation to also fill out a form of what would they love to see come out of the session, and there's a series of questions that I ask them about what's their week been like, how are they feeling right now, just so that when we start our session together, we can jump right into our work. Right.
And so what happens in the first session then?
We look at the stuff that they filled out, whether it be the questionnaire, the measurement tool that they used, or we just get started and this is the goal that they're wanting to work towards, and so we start looking at what do they need in order to make that happen, what's been holding them back perhaps in the past, not saying too much in the past, but sort of getting a lay of the land. I use the questions that I ask them ahead of time as an opportunity to get to know them a lot deeper in a quicker way, so that I've got a better sense of who they are, what's important to them, what they think has been holding them back. So I have all those questions answered already by the time I go into the first session with them, so we can really start looking at what are the changes you're wanting to make, and what would be the small steps that you would take in order to make that happen.
And then what would happen after that?
We probably would try to find a consistent time over the next, that would be their scheduled time on a weekly basis in the beginning, because I usually do at least an hour a week in the beginning, weekly, and then sometimes I make it 2 half hours spread out the week, depending on how a person feels that they do over the phone, or what their attention span is. And so then we continue to meet weekly, and in between that, it's, what kind of accountability would you like for your goal, and what would you love to see happen between now and our next time that we speak? How will you put what we've just looked at together into practice this week?
Right.
And so that's usually how we go. Some of the different forms I have online, again, there's a lot of information that I make available to clients, so I kind of like to just introduce it as we go, and so I don't always use the same thing for everyone. There's a lot of flexibility. So depending on what their kind of goal is, we can either track it and map it based on those forms that I use within the customer relations management program, or we just keep it just like on my own notes kind of a thing, and just keep checking in, how is this going, or what's coming up for you this week.
Right. And what happens in the second session?
That depends on what happened in the first session. So I can't say there's any one template. It depends on where the person is about their goals. A lot of what I do use, though, that is pretty consistent is, I feel that one of the most powerful tools that I can work with clients about is their thought process. So one thing that is pretty consistent is I will have them exploring their own internal monologues, their thoughts within their mind, identifying which are the thoughts that could be getting in their way. So we do go back and we revisit those, and I will start we'll start looking at which are the thoughts that are working and serving them, and what they're wanting to do, and which ones might be available to be turned around or moved around a little bit and changed.
Right. And how do you end a coaching engagement?
It varies. I'm learning now that I would I'm considering doing more looking at it, like lengths of time, and intending for a coaching engagement to say, let's do this for a month and then reevaluate, or 6 months and reevaluate, because I'm realizing now the ending is really, really valuable, and I haven't had as much consistency with the way that that's been ending over the past couple of years, because I perhaps maybe even have too much flexibility. But as of right now, it's that clients start to feel as though things are going really well in their life, and we just start to wean off of the coaching process. And so the doors almost in some ways are almost always open, in that they know that, you know, they can always have another session just if like something else is like coming up, and that they're meeting their goal, or something else comes up and they're wanting another goal met. So it's never, we'll just say like, okay, well, this sounds like a good place to start. And I don't really know how to describe it, other than I start to feel as though, you know, they are doing really well, and they come to the coaching session, and I always want to say, like, I want you to feel as though this is something you're really excited to do. Like, we shouldn't have to make up something to talk about, you know. And I do have some clients who have been with me for a few years, and there's this sort of more open coaching dynamic where we just look at, we move through many goals, many milestones over the course of that time together. And so we are, you know, we've covered lots of different things. And so we just either shorten this session, and, you know, rather than doing an hour a week, we now just do half-hour sessions throughout the week. And it's just more about the accountability and the reflection, or if they want to bounce something back, it's not as goal-oriented.
Right. And you mentioned assessments. Can you, which ones do you use typically?
It varies. It depends on, again, where the person's at. Sometimes I love the positivity ratio, because I think that gives me a really good, I use it as like a thermometer of where they're at. I'll look at life satisfaction with life scale. Then definitely strengths at some point. I just find that there's so many different questionnaires that I try to pick and choose depending on what they're needing. So if we start really finding like their strengths coming up, I'll ask them to take the VIA. I wouldn't want them to sit down for a 45-minute questionnaire, you know, right up in the front, and take hours and hours worth of questionnaires. So I kind of pick and choose which ones I do. The ones that are more So those are the main ones I think that I use and I find useful. Other times I think it's my own version of QALY, the quality of life inventory, that says, you know, between -10 and +10, where would you rate yourself in these different areas of your life? Some call it the wheel of life. Yeah. So I'll do sort of like a general assessment of that, and then see how that changes.
Right. And so what happens? They do the assessment, and you get it through your customer relations program, you get the results, and what then happens?
Well, the results get stored in their account, and it's a password protected account, so they get to keep all of their information in one space. I'll review it, we'll either keep it there or we'll talk about it. Sometimes some of the results from some questionnaires might be interesting to them if they really don't understand it. Sometimes I'll add in other things, like I'll use the resilience factor. She's got a great questionnaire in there about the resilience level and the different areas that it breaks into, so I'll sometimes use that. Or if I'm curious about what positive intervention might be useful for them, I take Sonia Lubomirski's positive activities worksheet and I ask them to fill that out. So it really depends on what it is that they're needing, and sometimes they'll have some questions about what they took, and I'll explain it to them a little bit more. So if it's one of those things we can actively do something with it, like positive activities, gratitude came up the highest for you, how would we put that into practice? Or strengths, kind of like talking to them about what that outcome was. Other times it's just something I keep for my own measures.
Right. And so do you bring it up in the session? You've had this, answer this, or what goes on in the session where you talk about it?
The actual assessment?
Yeah.
I'll just say that positive psychology is really big on measurements and the fact that we actually have tools now that have been validated that do measure for these things, and I think it's a great way to, depending on the scale, I'll either say it's a really great way to track your progress, or find out where you're at right now, or find out what activities might be really useful for you in increasing your positivity. So I'll introduce it under the umbrella of positive psychology, and that we have these different measurements that can be really useful for helping them get where they want to go.
And you give them feedback on it afterwards, like the next session?
Mm-hmm. Or some of them, they get a score, and I'll email it to them, and others, like if I'm sending them the if I'm sending them to Authentic Happiness to fill out the questionnaire, they'll get the feedback from the website themselves about what their score was and what their score meant. If it doesn't have something like that, then I would next session kind of talk to them about that.
Right. What about interventions? Do you use positive interventions?
I think that, I think the definition of positive interventions is still being intervened and defined. And so if we were to look at positive interventions as any kind of activity or something that someone can do to increase their well-being, I think coaching is a positive intervention. Within that, I do offer exercises or homework assignments that are, I often call them homework rather than homework. That are directly from the positive psychology literature, and others are just different ways of applying the stuff that we've talked about. I use a lot of cognitive models within my coaching, so sometimes we're using the positive intervention right there, like in the session. How do we reframe this? How do we challenge that pessimistic belief? And I'll actually teach some of the different models that we know are effective for working with a mind chatter. I use other things that I think are really strong positive interventions, but they come more from the yoga tradition. So if a client is coming in and they're saying, I've been experiencing just really, really high levels of stress, or I'm not able to fall asleep, I'll offer some techniques that are more yoga based, such as progressive muscle relaxation, which actually has been validated by science. So a lot of this is more of the somatic side. I think somatic interventions that I think are really useful. That's why I'm passionate about bridging yoga with positive psychology, to sort of create more flourishing within the whole being. So I'll do that. I use oftentimes gratitude exercises. And again, it's what the person's facing, and a lot of these I have either like a form or a worksheet that can go with it, but through the customer relations management program, they just get it emailed and they fill it out and it goes right to me. So those are the main kind of interventions, is that they're either very like cognitive based, or best possible self, or 3 good things. But I try to just figure out like what might be useful based on what the questions I'm asking and what it is they're wanting. Like I'm trying to figure out what else I could do, and I might explain to them the research behind the best possible self exercise, and have them play around with just starting to think up of things. One of the things I base a lot of my models around is that it's important to get them into a more positive space in order for them to think creatively. So I'm always kind of working that increasing the positivity ratio so that they're out of this very limited mindset, whether it be about their perspective of themselves or if it's their perspective on their goals. So I find that any intervention that we're able to do to up the positivity, also identifying like what does that for them, whether it be taking some time to play music, taking the weekend off with their kids, like looking at the kind of things that they can do that will raise their positivity ratio.
Yeah. And so when do you know when to use what? Like which interventions you use for this person, this situation?
That's a great question. It's totally an intuitive thing based on what I'm hearing them say. I'll describe the exercise to them, and the way that I frame it. Sometimes if it's like the exercise is not related to their goals. So say their goal is like to get a job, and they have to get their resume together, and they have to call a certain amount of people, and like that's what they would love to do. That's great. And then if I feel intuitively that one of the things that's going to help them meet that goal is if they feel really inspired by a vision of where all this is going, like what's the forest amongst the trees, I'll offer, can I invite you to consider like a bonus round or bonus points if you happen to also throw this in, and I'll explain to them both what I'm asking them to try on as the exercise, and then the why behind it. And I feel like the why is so critical. If I don't tell them what the why is, then it's not as useful. Like for me, it's really important to know the why I do things. And so I explain to them a little bit of the research and just like a real sprinkle, like research shows that people who've tried this have experienced this.
Right.
So it's all intuitive.
Right. So I do have a question about knowledge sharing. So like you mentioned teaching before, and also here where you mentioned the why. Can you say something more about that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that distinguishes coaching from positive psychology coaching, where coaching is very much simply on, not simply, complexly on asking questions, being very open-ended about the questions, mirroring a lot of what you hear your clients say, and gently just helping steer the oar in the direction that they're wanting to go. I think positive psychology coaching can bring in a little bit of teaching of tools. Like I consider myself a tool gatherer. I have this great toolkit of things that research shows can increase their well-being, and I'm not just going to like pour the toolkit over their head by any means, but I think selectively being able to like pick out which tool would be useful. I definitely am all about teaching tools to my clients in a way that finds that balance of like they feel more independent because they can do this tool, they can use it, whether it be just different models of how to think about things. I'm really passionate about understanding our nature so that we can do a better job nurturing ourselves. So I'll often normalize some of the experiences my clients have when they think like this stress response that they're having in them, or that they can't turn their brain off. Just being able to say, well, this is how your mind works, and here's how the cells connect. And I'll teach them a little bit about neuroplasticity, or I'll teach them a little bit about the autonomic nervous system and how their body is going to vacillate between stress and calm, and how to really work with that. And I find that strategic weaving in of some teaching when needed is actually one of the best ways to help them feel more empowered, because they know themselves better. They can better master their mind, better master their body.
Right. So can you give me an example, like a specific example of how you do it?
Sure. Like I oftentimes feel it's important for people to understand the negativity bias.
Yeah.
So they'll say, I'm trying to think of a recent example. A client will come in and I'll say, what would you like to focus on? And they'll start talking about a stressful experience they had that week, and that they can't seem to get the thought out of their mind, and they don't understand why it's bothering them so much, and they find themselves ruminating about it. So I'll I'll basically either we'll already have the language together, and I'll either say, well, you know, how are you seeing this how do you see this connecting to the negativity bias that we've spoken about in the past? And they'll say, well, you know, clearly see that my brain just wants to keep worrying and it's really enjoying worrying. Or if they didn't know it, I'll actually share some science with them, and I'll say, you know, in psychology we have a term for what you're experiencing right now, and it's negativity bias, and that it means that your brain is going to weigh and pay a lot more attention to the possible negative going on in your life than it is to focus on evenly or look for evidence as much for what's not working as it is for what is working. So I'll kind of talk a little bit about the negativity bias, or the fact that they're feeling that they're worrying about whatever it is that happened and what it'll mean moving forward, and why can't I stop worrying? If their goal is that they really just want to understand that a little bit better, I'll talk about, well, the brain sends endorphins in the brain when it is worrying, because nature has wired us to and has rewarded us for worrying in the past, and it's saying the more worrying you do, the better. But clearly it's not serving you here because it's stopping you from showing up the way that you want to. So I oftentimes you'll feel either through the breath or through just the energy of the person, they kind of like settle and they're like, oh, okay. And I think it gives them more control or a greater sense of control over what they can affect change in their lives. So those are some things. Or I'll talk a little bit about the optimism research, or I'll describe like always and everything versus not always, not everything, and how those type of thoughts our research shows are really important to take a look at, and how that relates to what kind of explanatory style you take on. And I'll explain what explanatory style means is just how you explain what it is that happens to you, and how and what some of our research shows about the benefits of optimistic thinking. And we'll work on, you know, so after explaining that, I'll say, so here you just gave me an always thought, such as, you know, I never do anything right. And then I'll say, well, giving that, can we get more specific? Like, what things are you not doing right? And so I'll use that model as a way of then gearing and asking them more questions that will help us fine-tune the mind chatter that they're having.
Right. You also mentioned something about flexibility. Mm-hmm. Can you say something more about that?
Other than physical, like being able to touch your toes, flexibility?
No, yeah. But you being flexible in the way that you work.
Yeah, I think it's both a blessing and a curse, in that my nature is to be very, very go with the flow and being very flexible. And over the past couple of years, I've learned how to value more structure. And I think that the more structured I am, in fact, some ways it's more useful for my clients, that the ones that are kind of things feel a little bit upheaval in their lives, it's because they actually don't have as much self-regulation, or they don't have as much structure. It's very rare that I'll have someone who's too structured in their life, and you know, sometimes they do, and they just want to like break free of boundaries and be able to just, you know, let their hair down. But on the other hand, I consider myself very much always adapting to the needs of my clients and to the wants of my clients. So I will adapt in, you know, sometimes the frequency of how we'll do our sessions. So maybe we do weekly sessions, and all of a sudden they're worried about having this really intense week. And so we'll say, okay, let's do 15-minute sessions 4 times over the course of the week, or let's do a quick check-in before this big stream of conferences that you're having all week, where in the morning we'll get on the phone, we'll look at what's your goal, what's your intention for our session, what's your intention for your day today. And so I'll definitely vary it up about what I'm doing. Another thing I forgot to mention is I do email coaching for college students. Going back and just was reminded of that, and that's just a whole different animal within itself, that I work with an organization that students will email me questions, and I'll do coaching via email with them. And the reason I thought of that in the question about flexibility was that again, like I feel like I'm very available to my clients, whether it be through text message check-ins, through Skype, through email, through phone calls if they need. So, you know, some people might say that's too much. Others might say, no, it's great that you're really adaptable. Most of the time, my clients are grateful that I'm really adaptable to them.
Right. And so, do they contact you, or is that you contacting them via text and Skype and?
Every once in a while, like so through the customer relations management program, I can pre-program like a set of check-in emails if I wanted to. Like say I had a session on Thursday and I asked my client, you know, what would serve them best for accountability. Oftentimes I try to have the accountability come from there and to me. They'll check in with me, but every once in a while, if it's something that I know is like I don't think it'd be an impediment. Like I'll say, oh, can you check it back in with me on Monday? So I'll program the CRM program for on Monday at this hour, send off an email to this person, just checking in with them. So if I feel inspired, I might just send like a hello check-in text message. How are you doing? But most of the time for accountability, or if they need something above and beyond our session, they contact me.
Right. Okay. And what about the interventions, the exercises? Do you sometimes change those?
Yeah, I don't think I'm not very textbook about them, because I also see that the researchers are always changing them too, in terms of the language and how to describe them. And so I'll often base the exercise or just on where we're at in our dialogue, in our conversation. Let me see if I can think of an example. Like if I know that the person's really visual, you know, and we'll maybe look together to create like a gratitude board or something, as opposed to writing down a gratitude exercise. Or if someone is really physically active, you know, what might make you feel better, and sort of looking at physical activity and other things. So I definitely am varying them and tailoring with the client, tailoring them to what it is that they need.
Right. I have a few questions about other things that you might be doing to kind of increase the effectiveness, and then we can take a 5-minute break. So one of the questions is, what do you do to establish credibility for yourself and the way that you work?
In general, or when I'm working with the client?
Both.
I think in general, the way I build credibility is like I write, so whether it be writing for Positive Psychology News Daily or writing articles and putting them in other things. Not so much, I haven't been as interested in like a peer-reviewed article, although I think at some point I'm really open to that. But the main thing is just putting out like a weekly newsletter where I share information. A lot of my clients come to me through that, or when I'm speaking in public, if I'm doing a workshop somewhere, I'll sometimes get a lot of clients through that. So I establish credibility for that way. I mean, there are definitely like the basics in being members of certain organizations. I think for some people that holds credibility, or having a master's from UPenn, I think that holds credibility. But then a lot of the times it's just the more heartfelt connection that people that are drawn to working with me, or, you know, that they feel for me, that they, you know, it's my energy. I also feel that I draw credibility just in that oftentimes in that introductory session, I can kind of like really get people and connect with them about why they might be where they're facing, you know, like why they might be where they're at in their life. And I think that gives them that sense of like, oh, somebody gets me, whether it be mirroring back and being really efficient at seeing where they're at and mirroring it back, and they feel really connected that way. Or just in being able to share like what, you know, you might be experiencing this because of this, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. And I think that often gives them a strong sense of that.
Right. And what do you do to create a good relationship?
I think consistency is important. So the fact that I can, you know, like that sense of trust, I think that you build trust over time. Although I have found that people will go really deep with me pretty quickly, and it's hard to put to words what I think that is. It's just, I love people, and I just think that it shows, you know, that they know, like, whether it be going above our time, you know, if we were scheduled for an hour, if I don't have another appointment coming up, like giving them more time. A lot of add-ons, like if I have like a CD or something I've recorded in the past that describes the concept, like 3 things that I'll give them. Whether it be just to say, like, I'm not interested in the money, really want to get you where you want to go. Like those sort of things. But I think at the end of the day, it's just, you know, that they feel my heart, that they feel listened to, that they feel appreciated, they feel valued, that I bring out their strengths. And most of the time I find that at the end of the session, the client really, like you could hear it in their voice, they feel more upbeat, they feel more energized, they feel supported, they feel loved.
Right. And what do you do to help them stay engaged in the process of working towards their goals, kind of in between the sessions?
I find primers are critical. Just whatever it is, that there needs to be some sort of change in their environment, whether it be alarms that go off on their phone, or I really encourage them to like put a post-it up or a note somewhere, and I ask them like, what can we change in your environment that would help you remember to do this thing? That's often the best that we could do, is just take a look at that. And I think that the more often I put out like my newsletters and other things that are just like emails or messages that I send out just as a public, like they find that that's really helpful, because they value my message coming into their inbox that much more, because they're invested in the coaching process. So, and I always tell them that I personally am always listening to an audiobook about something, or I'm always reading something that this is what enables me to be optimistic and feel so good and to be above that flourishing threshold most of the time. And I'm humbled about that, that I share a lot of myself in my own process with my clients. So saying like, I work at my own happiness level myself, and here are the kind of things that I do. If I'm trying to meet a goal, I have to put up a sign somewhere that reminds me of what it is, or I get other people involved. So I really encourage that role of primers.
Right.
I'll also explain some of the research on primers that it shows that with a primer, a goal is a lot more likely to be met.
Right. And do you do other things to help them stay engaged?
Do you mean during the session, or do you mean in between sessions?
Mostly in between sessions.
What else do I do to help them stay engaged in between sessions? Well, in the customer relations management program, there's a log for coach communication, where if they wanted to, they can log in and update me daily if they wanted to. And sometimes clients will actually take advantage of that they know that there's a receiving end of someone who's, whether like they're putting in information about something, whereas others don't really use that as much. So I really find that isn't, they have options. But I have been playing around with lately in the practice to see if it will work better to do 2 half-hour sessions, which actually will help that engagement a little bit more, broken up throughout the week rather than a full hour.
Right. But and when you say 2 half-hour sessions, is that all on the phone, or?
Yeah, over the phone. Most of my work is over the phone. Every once in a while I'll do some in-person stuff, depending on if people are in the area. Even if people live in the New York City area that are wanting coaching, in the beginning they might start off in person, and they'll think like, I really need to work with someone in person. That's really what I'm needing. And then all of a sudden they go, well, it's kind of not so bad on the phone, and I don't have to commute, and it's really cold outside, and I think I'll stay in. So, but in the beginning, I think sometimes it's great to make that individual connection.
Right. What do your clients tell you? What's most helpful for them?
I think definitely the cognitive techniques, the ones that really stick out, along with some of the different, the positive interventions that they really stuck to, whether it be gratitude, or do a modification of the gratitude journal that was actually created by Deb Giffen, that she calls the Daily Dozen, which is 12 statements. Clients that really keep at some of those interventions, they really find that that's been most helpful. So if I were to put them in order, definitely the learning and practicing how to reframe their experiences, understanding the role of belief systems and thoughts, the ability to talk back to their mind chatter, and counter some of the more pessimistic thoughts that might be going through their mind, and just knowing more about themselves, knowing how to, I'm needing to boost my positivity. Oftentimes if clients decide to take on meditation or any kind of those like practices that I might suggest, like, they really find that those are huge takeaways for them. And again, it depends on what we've looked at within our session. Sometimes if it's just strictly goal setting, my ability to support them in setting more goals that are specific, measurable, that are approach goals, that have primers, and kind of expressing or teaching that model. They'll use that model in other places. Sometimes clients will just find that in general, the coaching process has enabled them to be better listeners for their children or their spouses and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different things that they would, I think, if you were to pool any 5 clients of mine, they might say that past those 3 things of how to affect their own energy and positivity through exercises, reframing, and mind chatter, then they would all kind of take on different experiences based on what we've looked at together.
Right. So how can you tell whether or not that they're progressing?
Their energy shifts, their positivity shifts, they're taking action, and their things are getting done in their life. They feel like they're moving. I really see a lot of upward spirals, like as they start to do things and change some of their patterns, that they start to make change, and so they see that coming into play, and they feel better. They feel better. They are their energy is different.
Right.
That's the main way. Or we're looking at a very specific goal that they're working towards, and those, individual pieces of the pie are suddenly, getting checked off, and it's like they're accomplishing things and they're getting them done.
Right, right. And what do you think causes the changes? What could be some of the mechanisms?
I think definitely the broaden and build model of positive emotions, that as they start to see themselves, as they start to feel better, or broaden their thinking, or get rid of some of the negativity that they've been experiencing through their thoughts, or feel hopeful that this really overwhelming goal that they've had for a long time can be achieved. I think that as that starts to broaden more for them, they start to see more opportunities, they start to feel more positive, they start to have more energy, they want to do more. As they do more, they get more positive feedback loops that they're doing a good job, which continues to spiral upwards. So I think that mechanism, self-efficacy, that as they self-regulate to do something, or that as they start to notice little changes happen, they feel that they're able to do it better, more, and so because of that, they have more positive experiences. So I think those are some of the major mechanisms behind it. Let me see if I can think of any others. I also think that depends on how long that they're really working some of these different models. I think some of their mechanisms is also that their brain and their thoughts are being wired differently.
Right.
I still remember I remember specifically certain clients when all of a sudden they have this epiphany that something that gratitude just spontaneously came into their mind. It's like, well, they've practiced it, and they weren't sitting down and working it. They were just like, walking down the street, and they were thinking like, wow, life is really good, and so they're able to, they're creating new pathways in their mind, and that they're changing their schemas on some levels, like the whole belief system about either how the world works or how they should be in the world, and as they change that's one of the mechanisms as well.
Right. And what do you do to change, like to develop as a professional?
I think that above and beyond, definitely just walking my talk and being able to use this stuff in my day-to-day life. So I'm always talking back to my mind chatter. Good knows, got plenty of it. Doing these exercises in a way that I can understand them. So whether it be the daily dozens myself, definitely my own meditation, and then being a part of there's if anything too many resources available about how I could improve as a coach, but I just continue to always read, and I will do, particularly as I do consulting and speaking or putting together courses, I really love that because it enables me to periodically do another psych info search for gratitude and see what's the new research that's come up. I love things like SciBlog, which is a summary blog that will take a concept in social psychology or whichever one, and kind of put little summaries together of research, and I get those a couple of times a week, so I love reading those. Definitely participating in stuff in the positive psychology community, whether it be through IPA or through MAP, and kind of trying to stay up to date with some of the researchers are doing, or what their newest books are that they're coming out with, or TED Talks. I definitely look at, or audio programs. So those are some of the different things that I think I do. And also I find the blend between yoga and positive psychology, especially in the kind of yoga that I practice and teach, is very similar. So I'm also always looking for more of the Eastern and spiritual traditions and what they're saying, the positive psychology is always saying. So just by doing my own practice, whether it be yoga and meditating or working with my own thoughts, I really come across a lot of stuff that I can find to use with clients, and they teach me so much. Right, all of a sudden they're facing something, we together figure out a way to deal with that, and this is a new intervention, that's great. I definitely love workshops and other courses, and I'm a tool hog, so wherever I can find a tool, I'm grateful for it.
Right. And so when you learn something new, when you find a new tool, what happens then? How do you integrate it?
I find that if I write about it some way, it's useful for me. Sometimes it just gets filed away in my computer and I don't really do anything until I'm finding myself having a need for it. So it varies. I will definitely try it out first myself. Or I just, store it. But again, it's like, what if I need it in the future? For example, I came across a really great great forgiveness worksheet about a set of questions to explore that help facilitate the forgiveness process. So, file it, and when I need it, I take it out. I have a mastermind group of other people who are also both coaches and consultants and speakers. So oftentimes we'll share with one another, like, here's what I'm working on, or here's this great thing that I came across, or we'll sort of work with one another and we'll share different things at work. So I think that that's really useful, is to have a group of people that I can share that with.
Right. What would you say is special about positive psychology? You mentioned something earlier that was different from coaching. Can you say something more?
Sure. I think that the benefit of positive psychology is that it's really looking to, they're cleaning the hall, that we're looking to explore the how these things work. And I find that the mechanisms, for me, it's like it enables me to do more with understanding the mechanism of broaden and build enables me to create my own interventions or see things about my clients in a much deeper way. Like, I've worked with or looked at training programs with coaches that stay on that very open-ended questions level, and I feel like I have this whole other knowledge base to draw from, like even evolutionary psychology, which I think positive psychology does talk about a little bit. Like, I find that process, the how and the why about something, is really important. So I think what makes positive psychology coaching different just coaching is that there is an element of teaching, but not in a way that's like I'm or declaring myself a bit more of an expert about a topic than something that they know about, so that they can learn these tools themselves. And oftentimes my clients are really excited about something being research-based, and are excited to know that there are PhDs out there that are dedicating their lives to being able to understand this stuff, and that teaching them the mechanisms behind how this stuff works, I find is really empowering, and it enables it just enables them to go much further. I also think that when I sell my coaching, that I sell research-based, evidence-based coaching, some people don't really understand what that means. Other people, really value what that means. So it varies.
Right. We haven't really been talking that much about the group stuff. Mm-hmm. Can you say something about that?
Sure. It varies. The group dynamics I work with vary. I think that group coaching proper is also very different. So sometimes I'll do just teleseminars, which are not group coaching. It's more group teaching, where I will teach a different topic within positive psychology, give them the opportunity to think about it and work with open-ended questions and think about how to apply, which is a little bit coaching, but the real emphasis is on here's a topic in positive psychology. More traditional group coaching can be more working within a group dynamic with a group of people that want to meet a goal, and perhaps the theme is similar, which I haven't done as much of, but I would like to in the future, again, as my practice gets filled to capacity, offering a group format for people where they can also learn from each other. I've done a little bit of that with some groups, with some of the smaller groups, and they found it's been really effective, where it's like, getting to both hear me coach someone, having everyone else hear that happening is really useful, or my saying, hey group, what do you think? And really using the knowledge base of the group together has been really useful. So I really varied up. Like, I make a strong distinction between when I'm teaching positive psychology, or when I'm coaching and asking more questions, and just looking very, very clear on what do they want, what's the next step, where are they wanting to go.
Right. Are there other things that we've not been talking about that are important for me to understand the way that you work?
Perhaps just the fact that I do bring a fair amount of emphasis on what I call, what I call my approach to flourishing, which is wanting people to, that oftentimes I will bring in a body element of it. Like I'll ask them, where do you feel that in your body? And I really work with the power of breath and with the power of their emotions, wherever they might be, or sometimes just emphasizing the role of nutrition and food and what they're putting into their body. But these are all different things I either research or applied and kind of contribute to the knowledge base that I bring into coaching. And then sometimes I have clients who will do a blend where we'll do yoga, where we will do a physical movement where we are, and then we do coaching as well. And then so after bringing this into their body, we'll look at what are, great, how can we take this moving forward in your life? So that's still not as solidified as like the more traditional coaching approach, but I do try to emphasize the role of just like habit changes to their nutrition and their body. And I think that's really, it's really important to me to be able, and I find that, it really resonates with some of my clients as well.
And can you do that over the phone, or do you have to be together to do the yoga?
Sometimes it's just over the phone. So, I'll say like I'll have a client, for example, who's just like, she gets on our client session, our coaching session, she's so exhausted. She's just like, I've got so many things going on in my mind, I wouldn't even know where to begin. Yet at the same time, like I'll ask her to explain to me what is the feeling she's feeling in her body right now, and when she says it, I can feel it. It's this like, I'm both really anxious and jittery in my body, and I'm exhausted at the same time. I don't know if you've ever felt that. It's like you have all this like pent up energy, you want to do something with it, and at the same time it's like you're so lethargic. And so I'll ask her, would she be willing to try and exercise with me just to help her shift her energy? I get really clear on where does she want to shift her energy to. Then I'll have her put the phone on speakerphone. I'll say, okay, now just follow my cues, stand up, take your arms up over your head, take a deep breath in, lift your head up, and then shake your arms out. Or I'll like have her put on a song or something, like even over the phone. I've had clients where I've said, put me on speakerphone and let's do 40 jumping jacks and count them out loud so I know that you're doing them with me. Cruel little coach I am.
So do you do it also?
Sometimes it depends. With that time I'll say I'll do them with you. Let's count together. They're the jumping jacks. With the dancing to music, I didn't, but I appreciated that I could like hear her moving, and I would call out different moves. With Skype, sometimes like if I want to demonstrate like something that my client can do, totally. I'm also trained in something called Intensati, which is a exercise modality that brings affirmation into the body. So it's the combination of moving and exercising while repeating positive affirmations. So sometimes I'll have, if I have a client that like wants to believe a new way of thinking, I'd rather think I can handle it, but I really don't. And so I'll cue them to maybe like, what would your body look like? And even if it's over the phone, I'll say, let's stand up and have you spread your feet out and push down into the ground and lift your chest and lift your head, and like, what would it feel like to embody that? So I kind of bring more of that kind of stuff. It's not the norm, like I wouldn't do it every single time, but it's that flexibility of being able to say like, what do they need right now? And I'm a firm believer that sometimes I can get something into someone's being through their body much faster than I can through their thoughts and through their mind.
Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, like the research studies on posture, that people who slant are more likely to not believe in themselves or believe in what they say to themselves compared to people who sit up nice. Yeah, you're like, I'm going to sit up straight now. Like compared to holding a more upright body posture, that people, even if they're saying negative things to themselves, believe it that much more. Like there's a sense of confidence and trust within themselves that comes from changing even just the way that they sit. Or if a client is feeling like emotion, it's like they get on the phone, I can feel it just by talking to them, and I will actually say like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like you've just got this tight feeling in your chest and that there's a lump in your throat, and all of this energy is kind of pent up there. And they'll say, yeah, that's what I'm feeling. And so I'll walk them through a breathing exercise and I'll go, okay, well, before we keep going, can we maybe just look at moving that for a bit? And so I'll have them breathe into what they're feeling in their body and exhale it out. And doing that for 5 minutes gets rid of what they're feeling much quicker than if we were to try to talk about where they wanted to go with it. You know, sometimes they're just feeling emotional or upset. So it's like we can use their body much quicker than just trying to get at it from the mind.
Right. Are there other things that we've not been talking about that are important, kind of to understand the way that you work?
Let's see if I can think of anything else that's important to understand how I work. I think I have a real spiritual focus in my approach to my own life, and I find that I tend to attract in clients who are of that way. So I will look a lot at what I sometimes will call like a co-creation, or even looking at like the law of attraction, which is like so tabooed in the sciences. You know, I think that I might be booted off the positive psychology island if they catch this on film. Although I feel more secure in who I am, that I can actually really speak truthfully to that there's a strong element of focusing on helping clients understand that what goes on in their mind is what they end up having and experiencing, that they can really use the power of their mind to make experiences happen in their mind. And I think a lot of visualization is a lot of visualization processes is what I tend to take clients through, and a lot of it is based on somewhat like sports psychology and the role of imagery and that kind of work. And so I think that just another element of my practice is sort of this a little bit more of the esoteric, but brought into language that they really relate with. And I find that it helps them get where they want to go faster, and that's one of the reasons that I do it, is that, or I use that sort of model or sort of approach, is like, you know, not saying I push my belief systems on my clients by any means. It's just more like helping them connect to like their own inner power, or like, you know, I think just indirectly from working with me, I think that they feel that there's this energy within them that is beautiful and is inherently positive and inherently looking to become better, inherently looking to grow. And I think that those are real spiritual concepts that I'm not like, you know, beating down anybody's throat. I think it's just how they end up experiencing the work, which I think is interesting. And a lot of my background is also influenced from spirituality.
Right. What advice would you give to other people?
Coaches that are wanting to start off. I've coached some coaches, so I've really seen what happens when coaches struggle to make it as coaches. And I think that they struggle because they become too self-centered rather than other-centered. And so it's like, focus on serving and get out of your own way. It has nothing to do with the coach. It has everything to do with the client. So when I find that they get a really hard time, and all of a sudden they get caught up on them asking the right question, or them knowing what to say, or how are they coming off to the client, and it's like, it's not about you. It's just about, if you stay connected to serving and what's in the highest for the person you're working with, and seeing them in the light that they want to be seen in, that's the easiest way to get out of your own way about coaching. Because I think that one of the things I've seen a lot of coaches struggle, it's like, you know, they're waiting for someone to come around and give them a gold stamp on their bum, like, you are now ready to be a coach. And it's like, coaching makes you ready to be a coach. Working with people, the more people you talk to, the more people you work with, enables you to be able to do that kind of work. So I think to get out of your own way about it is really focus on service, and focus on being a vehicle for someone else to really shine and to be who they want to be in the world. And that process is a lot more effective than trying to, you know, trying to wait for something externally to let you know that you're ready. I think also being able to focus on what are the problems that you feel you're uniquely qualified to help people solve. So I've done some executive coaching, but I always tell my clients, like, I haven't been an executive. I've started off as an entrepreneur very early on. Like, I've spent very little time actually working for someone else. Only 2 months of my entire life have I ever held a 9 to 5, you know, and like, I think I'm okay with that. You know, every once in a while it's like, wow, that's strange, but like that's not the realm of experience that I have, so I don't try to pretend that I do. But if you want to talk about, you know, working with thought patterns and belief systems and goal setting and increasing positivity, like I've got a lot of experience in that, and I know what questions to ask to facilitate that experience. So, you know, go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. Really identify like what are the things that you love to do and the people that you love to work with. Like what are the kind of conversations you want to be having, and I think that that's useful for coaches to know, is to really focus on that. I find that a lot of my success as a coach has been building a brand for myself as a positive psychology practitioner, through a lot of different modalities, including speaking, products, courses, you know, through lots of different ways, not just coaching. And I find that all those other things that support my business model enabled me to actually add more value for my clients, and also create more, for some reason, blanking on the word that you used back here, the credibility. Thank you. Yeah. Build more credibility for me as a coach. So oftentimes just being aware that there are other ways to create an entity for yourself, or to create, to connect with clients. Because I know some really brilliant coaches that really struggle to get clients because they were just like waiting for people to pick up the phone and call them, where you need a marketing system behind you. You need a brand development system behind you. And oftentimes I think when coaches don't get clients, they think they need another certification, because we're often like big love of learners, and we're really curious and interested in the world, and so we're just looking for like yet another, you know, degree or another alphabet, you know, letter behind our name, where really it's going inward, and it's saying, what, you know, who am I here to serve, and how can I serve them, and how can I get myself out there a little bit more. And I feel like you need that beautiful blend of humility and self-confidence and self-efficacy, because it's like, it's a humbling field to be in, and it's, for me, it's awe-inspiring what the role I get to play in people's lives. And at the same time, if I don't own what I know, and own that I know I can bring this experience to people in some way, not to everyone, but the people that are here to work with me, you know, like, we could do this together. You know, if I don't have that, it makes it hard for people to find me, because I'm not putting myself out there, you know. So that's where I see a lot of people struggle.
Right.